The first time my neighbor ever asked me for a favor, she laughed while saying it. The second time she cried, but it was the sentence she tossed at me on that bright Colorado afternoon that changed both our lives forever. Standing beside her broken-down sedan with one hand on her hip and a teasing smile on her face, Rebecca looked straight at me and said that if I fixed her car, she'd marry me. Everyone nearby chuckled. They expected me to blush, flirt back, or eagerly lift the hood. Instead, I quietly wiped the grease from my hands, looked into her eyes, and gave an answer that made her smile disappear. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can heal broken hearts, if you believe hope is worth holding on to, and if you believe forgiveness and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a kind comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need them the most. My name is Nathan, and I had lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside Estes Park, Colorado, for almost 8 years. I wasn't wealthy. I owned a small auto repair garage that barely paid the bills after my father passed away and left me both his tools and his debts. Every morning I opened the garage before sunrise, worked until my hands ached, and returned home to a little blue house that felt much larger than one person needed. My life was peaceful, but it was lonely in ways I rarely admitted. Rebecca moved in next door the previous spring. She worked remotely as an architect and seemed to carry confidence everywhere she went. She greeted everyone with a smile, baked cookies for new neighbors, and somehow made difficult things look effortless. Still, beneath that cheerful personality, I often noticed exhaustion in her eyes whenever she thought no one was looking. The afternoon her car stalled on a mountain road. I happened to be driving home from a customer's ranch. I pulled over immediately. She laughed as she made that playful promise about marriage, expecting another harmless joke between neighbors. But something about the words unsettled me. Too many people had treated love like a bargain instead of a commitment. I closed the hood gently without even inspecting the engine and told her that I would happily fix her car because neighbors help neighbors. Not because anyone owes anyone their future. Marriage, I said softly, should never be payment for kindness. It should be the result of trust earned over time. The smile faded from her face, replaced by an expression I couldn't understand. For several long seconds, she simply stared at me. Then she quietly nodded. I repaired the loose fuel pump connection in less than 30 minutes. When the engine came back to life, she thanked me repeatedly and tried to hand me several $100s. I accepted only enough to cover the replacement part. She drove away looking unusually thoughtful. Days turned into weeks. Something had changed between us. Rebecca began stopping by the garage with homemade lunches whenever she knew I was too busy to leave. She volunteered to redesign my old business website after discovering it looked like it hadn't been updated in 15 years. In return, I helped her install shelves, repaired a leaking faucet, and cleared heavy snow from her driveway during an early winter storm. None of us kept score anymore. One evening, she finally told me the truth. Years earlier, she had been engaged to someone who constantly reminded her of everything he had done for her. Every gift came with expectations. Every favor became emotional debt. She had started making jokes about marriage because pretending love was transactional somehow hurt, less than believing in it again. Her voice trembled as she admitted my answer. Beside that broken car had shaken her more than she expected. For the first time in years, someone had helped her without asking for anything in return. Not long afterward, my own struggles caught up with me. A major repair contract fell through, and I faced the possibility of closing the garage my father had spent his entire life building. I didn't tell anyone. Pride can be heavier than any toolbox. Rebecca found out anyway. Instead of writing me a check, she organized something far more meaningful. Quietly, she spoke with neighbors whose cars I had repaired over the years. Families I barely remembered began sharing stories about late-night roadside rescues, discounted repairs for struggling parents, and free maintenance for elderly veterans. Within days, my schedule was filled for months. They weren't donating money. They were choosing to support someone who had quietly supported them for years. Standing in my crowded garage on a snowy Saturday morning, watching familiar faces wave as they waited patiently for their appointments, I realized kindness always leaves footprints, even when we think no one notices. Months later, Rebecca invited the entire neighborhood to a summer barbecue. As the sun dipped behind the Rockies, she walked toward me carrying a small picnic basket. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic audience, and no jokes this time. She simply thanked me for teaching her that real love never begins with conditions. She reached into the basket and pulled out the old wrench I had used to repair her car. The handle had been polished and engraved with a single sentence: "Thank you for fixing more than an engine." If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes that kindness matters. And before we reach the end, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment telling us about a simple act of kindness that changed your life, because your story may inspire someone else today. Rebecca never had to keep the playful promise she made beside that broken car. Instead, over time, she gave something far more valuable than words. She gave trust. I gave patience. Together, we discovered that the strongest relationships are never built on bargains. They're built on quiet acts of compassion repeated day after day, until two ordinary lives become one extraordinary story. And sometimes, the greatest answer to an impossible question isn't yes or no. Sometimes it's choosing kindness first and letting everything else find its place afterward.